Welcome to The Choice to Grow. I'm Scott Schwenk. Through these dialogues, we'll explore fresh perspectives and discover practical tools for navigating a thriving life that adds value wherever we are. I'll introduce you to innovators and creators from across our world who embody what it means to cultivate growing as a way of life. Let's prepare together. Take a deep breath in. Hold the breath briefly as you soften your shoulders and soften the soles of your feet and palms of your hands. Then exhale like you're releasing tension and setting down a heavy burden from every cell. Now let's dive in. Welcome back, everybody, to The Choice to Grow. I'm so enjoying this community that's growing here and knowing that you're all tuning in. I'm enjoying rewatching and re-listening to the episodes myself, and I'm certain I'll re-listen to this episode several times. My next guest is a 3 times founder, writer, and host of the Niches You podcast. So 3 times founder, he didn't do the podcast 3 times. He's founded businesses 3 times. And his podcast ranks in the top 0.5% worldwide. That's an accomplishment. Weaves together business, creativity, spirituality, and personal growth. His daily writings, which is how I found him, are prolific. Sometimes they're an economy of words, sometimes they're a few paragraphs. The main place to find his writings are on Substack. I discovered them on Instagram. And his Substack is currently a top 10 philosophy publication globally. So this has made him a trusted voice for thousands seeking clarity, purpose, and impact. It's a great daily touchstone. So without further ado, please welcome Matt Gottesman.
Thank you so much for having me, Scott. I truly appreciate it. And to your community too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Matt, when you hear the title of the show, The Choice to Grow, what does that in this moment evoke for you?
I mean, that's a daily practice. We're never not growing. We're never not being asked to lean in very much, and look at where is this all going for me? What is it that I'm here to do, and how do I continue to and organically? Because I think what happens is we can put a lot of pressure on ourselves for am I doing enough? Should I be doing more? What am I here to do? What's the purpose of it all? All these things, and we get in our head. And I think the choice to grow is your choice to participate, to show up. And so if I show up and I lean in, then God takes it from there. And so it's a very interesting balance, because it's taken the driven side of I think humans. We're very like, let's make something happen, but let's be flexible to receive the information we don't know. And that's very surrendering. It's very humbling at the same time.
Now, you used the G word, God.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
Growing up, did you have a relationship with like a living sense of something, or was it more like enforced, or there was nothing and you found it on your own?
Yeah, it was never enforced in my home. I'm very blessed about that. My parents believed in this idea that your relationship with God is a very personal one for just you and God. And you can't force anybody to have that relationship, because that is specifically between you and God. It's sort of like, if you try to enforce, are you doing God's job? Are you trying to get in the way and be like, here's how it's going to be? And, but I get it. I think, it's an interesting conversation for anybody, or an interesting topic, because humans come in and kind of try to make sense of something that's very much a very spiritual, omnipresent thing. And that's not always easy to digest and understand. And so in the home I grew up in, I we were a very spiritual family. My father was very entrepreneurial, and he leaned very heavily on my mother, who was very spiritual. My mother was very spiritual, who leaned very heavily on my father for just groundedness and direction. And they were a very good team dynamic. I say were because my father passed in 2019. Um, I didn't have this deeply connected relationship that I do now with God until about 2012, 2013, 2014 it started. It was kind of like my return back. And there was a funny thing that a group of us men, we were all talking about, like, we were asked in this group, this men's group, we were doing like a breath work, and then the question came up, when do you think you disconnected from God? And every person, every man in the room all said like something that happened in our youth, because, we're connected to our soul, we're good, we're feeling good, we're young, we don't know what we don't know. And then of course the world is very good at disconnecting us. It's like, it's whether intentionally, unintentionally, that's, there's no blame, there's just only path, right? And so but then the next question was, when did you return? And it was very interesting. And we had a room full of men of every kind of religion or no religion, or, no religion, all the things. But it was very interesting because every man could agree when nothing else worked. And you get to this place where you feel like, I'm trying so hard. And everybody's glass ceiling is different. Everybody's wall is different. But you hit a wall and you go, there's got to be something greater than me. There's got to be something greater in general that I need to surrender to. And I had hit a series of really tough things that happened. What was so interesting about it, both professionally and personally, was they were so unexplainable that it's like you're doing a good job, quote unquote, like in the work, you're doing a good job in the marriage, you're doing a good job in all the things. Like, for the most part, I mean, none of us are perfect. None of us are perfect. But you're present and you're doing a good job. And then suddenly, like that, it's gone. All of it.
Mm.
And some people might blame God, or might blame, certain circumstances. I instead was curious. And I'm like, and I'll tell you why, because on one hand, I was having a difficult time professionally with some of the people I was around.
And
And
what was your profession at the time?
well, I've always been a a digital strategy consultant. Basically, I would
Ah,
go into companies, and they were trying to understand the internet. So like everything you see on the internet with all these businesses, like I had to make that happen for them, right? And
yeah,
like everything from the audience to the software, the hardware, the front end design, like their world, they're using the internet for their brand, for their company.
yeah,
And it was great. I had a lot of really great clients as a consultant, and I would help execute the initiative too, not just tell them what to do. Like I had to bring in the resources and all the people that make the internet alive, right?
yeah.
And so what I thought was a really great job, but I had a moment where professionally, in a particular brand, and some people that I was around didn't feel good, didn't feel right at my soul level. And I remember having a surrendering moment to God, where I was like, because I read in the book, I forget which book, but everybody knows that it's like you're only the average of the five people you're around. And I'm like, oh my God. I stood up on this plane and I was like, I don't know if I like the people I'm around professionally. This is not good. I was like, you know what, God? Like, help. God help me. Next day, gone. All like the first, it was a wave of things. It was the first, my contract was just about up, and I was released from the contract. And then like it set off a whole other set of different other businesses that I was tied to, because I brought them all together, to work. So it was all these things happened. And that's shock to a system. And I think what happens a lot of times is we can get into any number of like wavy emotions and feelings, like, and blame and victim and all this other stuff. And I didn't, but I was like, I don't know what's going on. This isn't good. This really isn't good. And it really rocked me. And so, I yielded, it's like, here I asked God for help, and all of a sudden like something is removed. And if we're not careful, we can think that we're being punished when we're being protected. And I was being protected, and I did ask for that, because
That's right.
I felt like God was like, "Ah, can we do it my way now? Because I have so much more
Yeah.
for you. I have so much better for you than this. I'm so glad you asked. Thank you. By the way, like, we gotta go. So like we're gonna just like leave these people behind, and we're just gonna go." And you don't think about it in the moment because emotions kick in, and you're just, you
Fight,
know,
flight, freeze.
yeah, yeah, all the things. The nervous system kicks in. What am I gonna do? What's this? And at the time I'm a husband, like
Am I going to
I'm all
live
these
under a
things.
bridge?
Right. Like, all these things come up, all these emotions come up. And do we ever though stop to take a second to be like, am I being moved? Am I being protected? Am I being up leveled? Am I being saved? Like, is something bigger happening? Yeah, something's bigger is happening. It's always something bigger is happening. And that's kind of like why I always say, like, nah, bigger, God, because it's like this idea of, again, like, we see this, or we have this idea of this, even if it's really, really big, we can, but it's still bigger than us. It's the vastness of God is so limitless and so beyond sometimes our understanding, which is beautiful because that's how you keep surrendering and like humbling yourself, because you're like, oh wow, there's always can be more that I don't know, and
But do we have a coherent enough operating system, or do we need to
yes,
update it to be able to run more
yes,
of those coherency programs from
there you go.
source?
There you go. That's very true. Yeah. And so it's a very participatory life. You have to be very active with it and very surrendering and humbling. So it's like you've got to be like the warrior and the poet. You've got to be like the let's make it happen, and let's be um, humble enough to receive what we may not know and understand yet, and versus the arrogance I think sometimes of humans is that, like, I'm gonna just make this because I've been called to it, so it's just this. And it's like, yeah, but what about all the things you don't know that go along with this? So we have to
Yeah.
be remain open and humble in that process, in that pursuit, you know. So that's
Let's talk about
that's something.
practices though.
Yeah.
Like it's one
Yes.
thing to have a desire. It's a could be inclusive of petitionary prayer as opposed to
Hmm.
like affirmative prayer. Petitionary prayer is, I'm asking for something. Please do this, or please help me, or please take this away. And then waiting for something to happen. But like, is my current operating system, mind, framework, perspective taking capacity capable of noticing the guidance, or do I need to be doing some practices to cultivate the subtlety of my ability to sense how I'm being moved?
A
And
hundred
what's the
percent.
difference between my ego
Right.
or a highfalutin form of ego pretending to be, my idea of God, a projection of God, like to actually have that
Yeah.
discernment in place to know what's what
100%.
and who's who.
Ego is asking for what you want, um, and versus um, surrender is asking for what you need, right? And I think that's a very big difference. Ego is saying, like a prayer of ego is, I want, I want. Of course, like God's like, of course I know what you want. I put the desire in your heart. Of course I know. By the way, would you like it to be better than that? The way you're envisioning it? It's like,
Right.
maybe.
Well, a
Like,
tiny bit of just of tapping on what you just said, which is there are plenty of people, as a person who works with people for the last 30 years, I see plenty of people. I've been one of those people who my ego has wanted things that I didn't realize were actually going to keep me in suffering or
right.
keep me in a familiar zone. Like there's a pattern that one of my mentors years ago coined the term magnetizing disapproval. That people that
Mm,
it's a prolific pattern that people have of we say we want love. We say we want more money. We say we want more health and well-being. But what is our constitution actually attracting?
mm. Yeah. Oh yeah. What's our behavior? You know?
Yeah, and the behavior we don't see because
Right.
it's like it's so like air to a bird and water to a fish
Mhm.
until
Mhm.
we can actually start to recognize it.
Well, and a lot of times too, when I pray now, removing the ego from it and putting the what's the need, meaning like I'll pray like, please give me the clarity to see what you want me to see. Or like I'll start off in my mornings when I journal and pray. It's like, please have me speak to who you want me to speak to today. Please have me hear what you want me to hear today. Please have me see what you want me to see today. Please have me speak, or please have me create what you want me to create today. And then what happens is it brings me into a very present state to where I can see where is God interacting throughout my life all day long. And then at the end of the day, when I reflect, you're so present that you see where things are happening. Like, oh, I did have that conversation. That was very interesting. Why did that conversation come into my world today? Or like,
Mm,
I did create this. Like, why do you think that that was the thing that needed to be created? Like, it makes you so present. It removes this, like, give me this, and turns it into like, how do you want to use me today? And then,
yeah.
and then, and it's interesting because like that's way more abundant, like way, way, way more abundant. Is asking for the clarity and the wisdom and the the signal, if you will, versus dictating like I want this. It's like, well, okay, I know, but like how about, instead of repeating certain things and staying so limiting in that, how about we look at where do you really need to be going, which by the way is the amplification of the things you want anyways.
But
So
I'm imagining you're aware that that perspective, like if you zoom out and don't be Matt for a moment and you just be awareness of Matt,
mhm, mhm,
like that perspective is not yet common. It's not a center of gravity
I know.
in the United States, let alone worldwide,
Yeah,
to have curiosity be leading the way,
right.
to
I
have
know.
that open-mindedness to this is probably for me and let me be curious about how is not yet leading the way. I think if it were, we'd be living in a very different world.
Right, and I do feel like it is where we're heading. So it's
But how
early.
did you get there? Like, were you always optimistic as a kid? Did you, like,
It's interesting. I guess I mean it's probably warrants a little bit of a longer story. So I'll try to give the condensed version. But when I look back, I was raised very independently. My parents were very like my dad was constantly teaching me how to make my own choices and how to be very diligent and curious and not follow the status quo, not take everything said as, like that it's exactly what's being said. Like you have to be very genuinely curious and do deeper dives. And you have to figure out your path. And so in fact, he was very much like, I don't, sometimes parents, I think, they're very much like they want you to step into their footsteps. And he was like, I don't want you to step into my footsteps. I want you to find yours. Now, whether he knew what he was doing or not, he did me a huge service for what would become the rest of my life. My mother was very much like, if I had an issue, she'd be like, I think we should pray over it. Like, let's go into the energy of it. She was very much into energy and she studied just a lot of religions, a lot of like all leading up to kind of like, oh, I think we're all really after the same thing and it's God. And it was like, but she wanted to be very well versed in just culture and understanding, different traditions and things like that. And just to be educated, but also but careful, meaning like, hey, at the end of the day, it's an inside job. Everything's an inside job. So she was constantly grounding me into like, you got to feel into it. You got to understand your intuition, all these things. Now, what happened was because they raised me so independently, I remember like, so here I'm taking kind of these frameworks, this operating system of how I am, and operating in this physical world that is looking at me like I'm crazy, even though I think it's common sense. It's common, you know, no, I don't mean harm. Yes, I am trying to collaborate. No, like the world operates in a very external context. It's very emotionally charged, and I get it. I completely understand it. You know, and so but the more we ground, and the clearer we are, uh we kind of tend to realize we're perpetuating a lot more because of what's in our heads. So a lot of this was happening. I was trying to operate in a physical world. I had a lot of really great business experience. I've been working for myself my whole life, and it wasn't always met with ease. A lot of it was actually my training of imagine like you're consulting with a brand or a company, and somebody gets triggered and they're like, you know what are you up to? And I'm like, what do you mean, what am I up to? I was like, no, like this is how you just do good work. And what it's like, it catches you off guard. You're like, I'm so confused right now. I'm like, no, I just no, like this is good, and I'm a consultant, so take all the credit, we're cool. Like, I can take all the credit. I'm like, you hired me to do the job. So yes, take the credit. Like it was just, I was constantly dealing with, here I come from a very entrepreneurial family and I love business, but I'm operating in a business world that I'm not agreeing with. That's weird. That's very ironic. And I'm like, oh, the system is a very interesting place. They're operating off of emotion, title, status, credentials, who's who made a phone call, I went to this school, all these different things versus the work. I came from a family that just knew how to do work. When you do the work, it's very grounding. It's very it's very peaceful. It's very like, it builds your confidence because you're like, no, I just like doing the work.
What
If you're
stock
short,
did your family come from on that you know of? Like if we scroll through the generations, were they laborers? Were they rulers? Were they like what was the kind of general orientation of your
I
lineage?
mean, that's interesting. That's an interesting, they were all entrepreneurs. And so they were all builders. They were all builders. So that's a good question. They all built something where they wanted to provide something of value to society. And I think they wanted to solve some sort of a problem, or a need, and be of service. And because they were entrepreneurial, so they most almost all of them did it on their own. I mean, with whether they had employees or not, um, there was a lot more autonomy and agency. So you can think about that generationally. I'm used to autonomy and agency, like because you're owning your path in some way without the world trying to dictate how you should live your life.
Well, also that orientation, not that there's only two orientations, but that how can I add value? What can I give? In
Right.
my own life, as I watched that transition from insecurity that seeks to take, which is one of the forms of
Right.
narcissistic, problem is like, I'm messed up and I need to get, and let me find it wherever, however, that shift
Mm.
from getting and taking or looking for what's missing and wrong into what can I give? How can I add value? How can I serve?
Yeah.
It just gives so much energy and spaciousness,
Right.
even spaciousness and energy when there's especially when there's difficulty, to do
Yes.
the right thing.
That's spot on. I mean, that's why people even are like, "Wow, you can really hold a container when there's like rough stuff is going on." I'm like, "Well, yeah, yeah." That's it. That's the space that's cultivated for that. It's um, when you're in the work of it, and the service of it, and you also fundamentally learn a lot about people. And I always say like, I think that anything that we do, we don't want to trigger people. We want to ground them. We want like I want you grounded. Like I want you feeling more deeply rooted in who you are. I don't want to tell you how to think. I don't want to tell you what to do. I don't want to tell you any of that stuff. But I do hope that our interaction brings you into a space that you feel more like you in a place of clarity so you can move with more wisdom. You know what I mean? For whatever that is for you. And when we operate that way, well, now we're living in a very different place, and that's why I think that what's happening. I do see this shift that's very much moving towards that direction, and obviously, like when you have one system kind of collapsing and a new one building, um, it's rough. It's rough stuff. It's rough to watch, and to not be affected by what you
Yeah.
see, while also trying to navigate like, hey, you know, um, while one world collapses, like how do you build a new one from integrity, from morals, from values, from principles, from a grounded place that is also like, I think there's this balance, right? We don't want to be too up in the clouds, because we want to, I get it. Like everyone wants to feel good. I'm like, yeah, but we need grounding. We need grounding. Like life is still lifing, and you have to have this kind of, you need foundation. You need both of the energies. Like, you need the intuition, the flexibility, and the creativity, and you need the discipline and the structure and the foundation that holds like the container for that,
Well,
and
let's
they,
let's
yeah,
open this up in a particular way if it works. So vertical growth and horizontal growth
yeah,
is something I'm familiar with as a longtime student and person who weaves integral theory, integral teachings of Ken Wilber's kind of work into, and all the people who've come after. So vertical growth would be like waking up, transcendent states, whether
right,
that's the Christian version of oneness, whether that's the Buddhist, emptiness of self and recognition that all of life is the radiance of the emptiness of
hmm,
self, or whatever, Ein Sof. There's vertical development of awakening
hmm,
to absolute awareness, but that's not enough. And I think we're living at a time when or a fresh time, when once again the wheel is turned to go, you know what? Relationships matter. How we grow the food matters. Like learning our connection to more realms than just absolute consciousness matters.
hmm,
The nervous system matters. How we collaborate matters. So like when I hear you talk about grounding, how it touches me, and I'm curious what else you might say about it, is when I'm grounded in the way you're pointing out, I can see and experience and taste more of reality. And then from there comes choicefulness. And in choicefulness, there's actual freedom.
Right. That's agency. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, we were given free will for empowerment. Do you like the choices that you are making? And it's okay if you made a rough choice or a choice that didn't end up working out, because that teaches us to make better choices. That's growth, right?
Yeah.
And um but you know, and the way I look at God and free will is God's a choice, not a force. It's like, if I force you to choose me, like, then you have no connection.
Yeah.
But if you choose me, just like you choose your partner, and you choose your, the way you show up into your work, and the way you steward the money, and the way you steward the relationships, like, you feel empowered. And yes, you will make mistakes, which is why, like, I feel like there's this, we have free will to make, any choice. Do you like the choices you're making? And then, by the way, I always like to say this, like, God's like, hey, listen, put your soul in a Ferrari. Here's the manual. What I what I would like is, like, like, you've got choice, you've got free will, but, like, if you need some assistance, let me help you. Let me co-create with you. Like, ask for help. Learn that the soul, like, knows what you need, and, like, but you have to be participatory. And I think that's where the grounded nature comes in. It's like, you have to be active. You have to be willing to be in the work. You have to lean into the conversations you don't want to have. You have to, relate somehow in unrelatable situations. You have to find ways to work through stuff, and from a connected nature, in a physical world, versus it's either this or it's that. It's like,
Right.
and that's where I think I'm playing in that middle ground, of, yes, we want to be deeply connected, to the creator, to God, and at the same time, we want to integrate and actually, like, participate down here while we are on earth, you know and um and lead from that place and lean in. And it's I think, it's interesting. um I think it's human. Listen, every human wants to be seen, felt, heard, and understood. That's really
Yeah.
what I think is going on.
100%.
And so now, how they go about that, I think we're seeing, you know a lot of different, stuff play out. And I think that that's what's happening, is, so I
When
think
mostly
everybody wants.
people are seeking it through a second person situation as
Absolutely.
opposed to a first person. Like, your descriptions of your relationship to God ring in my ear predominantly as a second person relationship to God, I and thou. And yet there's still a first person relationship available. It's all, like when the master teacher said, I and the Father are one, that's a first person relationship.
Right.
And then there's the all of it, like, it's all, like, there's nowhere, nothing that exists that could be separate from the force of the creator itself. So thereby, is there actually free will?
Yeah. Well, and
Is
and
it,
so
that's a far down the rabbit hole kind of
right,
question. We don't
right,
have to go all
right.
the way there, but, like, how do, like, if there's nothing that's separate from that which created it, then are there two or more consciousnesses?
I'll give you, I'll give you a couple different examples, which I've given before, and I love talking about it. And in case I can't remember when I go after one, but
Okay.
uh, so, I remember I was really frustrated about something once. I was so frustrated because, it's like you feel disconnected. Maybe you feel a little angry. You feel in the motion of it, right? And I
Yeah.
remember yelling to God. I'm like, oh, I'm so frustrated. And, like, I went on this 20-minute tear. And at the end, I'm like, I'm sorry for yelling. And it was that simple. And I could feel in that moment, I could feel God be like, that's okay. And I'm like, that's forgiveness. You didn't yell at me. You didn't judge me. You sat and held the container. You let me be in the emotion of it without you taking it on. You didn't belittle me. You didn't make me anything lesser. And you waited until I finally came up out of it and into my senses and got back to connection. And you were right there waiting for me. Got it. And it gave me so much extra um, understanding of what forgiveness is for the physical world, because we can take things so personally
Mm.
when it's not about us. If somebody is verbally attacking, it is not about you. It's just not.
It's about their
And
energy
then,
state at the moment.
yeah, and there's that expression, you'll never see somebody doing better than you put you down, and it's like, and they were meaning it more in the entrepreneurial world, but I actually turned it into like the spiritual side of things too. And it's like, yeah, because people who are technically doing better or have more peace or more whatever, they typically like have been through a lot, and they're there, they understand, there's empathy, they're like, no, I got you, I get it, and then people who may not be doing as well, they can be very projecting out onto you, and
Yeah.
so you have to kind of learn this world of like not taking it personal, which is it's a lot of practice. It's absolutely a lot of practice. But how do we not take it personal? We have a deeper relationship with ourselves and God, like by having that, like, oh, like I know how I'm operating, I know what I'm trying to do, I know who I am, I'm constantly working on that person. Then I'm less likely to take what the other side that might be in that moment having a moment, and then we can actually disarm it versus escalate the situation. And that's a very different interaction with people, right?
It is my sincere, deep, profound wish that there's a huge groundswell of people growing into the capacity for repair, because rupture is natural.
Right.
But to
Right.
actually really, really get good and nimble and care about repair,
Mm-hmm.
and care more about the orientation that we are all fingers on the same hand,
Mm-hmm.
than getting into right, wrong, good, bad, fighting and all. Like, it doesn't have to go that way. We have all the creativity
Mm-hmm.
to solve all of our issues on this planet.
Right. Right. Well, and I was saying, like, everybody, like, you guys want to solve the world's problems? We're like, yeah. And I'm like, just solve yourself.
Right?
And people always go like, it's not that simple. I'm like, it is that simple.
No,
It
it really
is that
is.
simple. I was like, the work you do on yourself is what ends up perpetuating out into the rest of the world. And so, versus, if we build versus protest it all the time, we're building the alternative path. We're building the thing. Like, you fighting a system that is built on fighting.
That's right.
It thrives on fire and fighting.
That's right.
You're helping perpetuate versus, like, I'm going to build a thing over here. And I was just saying this to an online group the other day, how I was like, we used to live in a time where you're like, I'm just one person. I'm like, guess what, guys? That's gone. We have the
Yeah.
internet. I'm sorry. You're not just one person. You have
Well,
access
look at
to.
what just happened in Nepal. At this
Yeah.
recording, Nepal was in last week, a little longer than last week. Huge chaos, like riots, protests. It was a governmental thing that was really, really problematic. The one of the leaders stepped down. On Discord, Gen Z came together in a matter of like 24, 48 hours. Over 100,000 people gathered together on Discord from Nepal, these young Gen Zs, and they moved things forward and they got a new leader elected. Like, like that.
Yeah. 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 That's what, like, so we're no longer, now here's the thing, we're no longer in an era of we're just one person. What does that difference make? Because we have the internet, we also have a responsibility with the internet just the same too. Internet is a beautiful tool, or it can be a very weird disruptor, right? And good and bad. So it's like, but that's why I was telling these folks, like, listen, we're no longer just one person. Like, meaning, like, who am I? I'm just one person. Like, now your ideas, and your commitment to the work and what you want to build in this world purposefully actually can but never before accelerate and amplify. I was like, but it also requires an insane amount of accountability, responsibility, ethics and integrity. Like, now all the principles, like, so the internet opens up the window to everything that you can see, and you're like, oh. And then at the same time, instead of pointing the fingers, we have to be like, I got to get to work. Like, you got to get to work. And in the
Yeah.
work, you learn everything that you need to do about who you really are. And it gives you multi-dimensional type of, like, capacity and thinking. because you kind of seeing all the things, seeing all the angles. You're in the work. The work is like, that's why it's the journey. It is the journey. It's not the destination. The journey is literally like, hey, I want you to live so deeply in this and on purpose that you never want to leave this. Like you realize, like I said this on a video recently, it's like the outcome, you start to realize, like, oh my God, it has nothing to do with the outcome. Like I love this game so much of what I'm doing and embodying my work and being so disciplined and consistent with it that I never want to be out of that work because it feels right. It feels grounding and forward moving and contributory and valuable. Yeah, I never want to leave that, you know?
So Matt, what in life, I don't know about you, but I can see patterns in myself. Like when I'm not required to be speaking out loud or thinking in words and I just have like open space time, there are certain themes that I'll come back to again and again and again, like, or that'll come up in my mind that aren't necessarily positively creative. They're just certain
Right.
themes. And that's like, oh, that's where my work is. That's where my work is. Where's your main edges where you're like, yep, I need to be vigilant around that because that can come up when I'm hungry, angry, lonely, tired, or just have too much time on my hands or whatever. What are the edges in your development that you're looking at?
It's a great question. I for a long time, I think discernment was a really big one. I it's interesting. Kind of a side story to that. I remember I was on this podcast and this woman was talking about how she's like, it's easy for you to say, about trust. She's like, I've never been able to trust, you know, um, anybody. I have trust issues. She was talking about all these things about like never, trusting anybody and all this stuff. And I was like, what's so interesting? She goes, what? I was like, you were one extreme and I was another. And she's like, how so? And I was like, you trusted nobody. And she's like, yeah. I'm like, I trusted everybody. And she was like, got it. And I was like, yeah. And you kind of learn that not everybody moves like you. I was like, now we can't automatically assume that no one is to be trusted, and we can't automatically assume that everybody's to be trusted. What we can assume is who am I interacting with right now in front of me? Can I pay attention to their character? Can I really understand that one, humans will be humans will be humans is what I say all the time. Emotions going to kick in, and just like that, they can, whatever it might be. I had to learn to really discern and pay attention and become very present with people. What do they want? What are they in relation to me? um what is, this, is this a moment, a season, is a lifetime with this person? And I think that was one of the best edges I really had to learn, was like by being very present and constant. It's a constant practice because you always kind of, you never, they say like, you never know who's in front of you. Like, yeah, but if you pay close enough attention, you can kind of figure out, like, if you really pay attention to like the way somebody does things or their actions and their words, and are they all lining up? So that was, because I was just I and it was a repeating pattern, because I would find that even good people that I trusted on some things, all of a sudden they went away at one point. I'm like, again? I was like, I lost the good ones. Like, it was more so in business, but I'm like, even the good ones went. I'm like, okay, what is this about? And that was something that, starting around 2019, that started to really also teach me about how do you build in a way where you can learn to trust and rely on yourself, not from an isolated place, but from an empowering place of doing the work, where if I'm in the work, and what let me backtrack. What happened was, I noticed that throughout my entrepreneurial journey, I was always wanting to do things with people first to start. And I think part of that was, you kind of have this little bit of this fear of doing it all completely on your own to start, right? And I think that that was what was happening for me. And so finally I was like, let's just start a direction alone and then build and bring in people from there, versus having to always partner to make something. I needed to actually, like, let's first, like, what does it mean for me?
So let's just
And
frame this
how
a
do
little
I
bit as a, and I know this is a made up frame, but like
Yeah.
let's say collaboration has stages. So in the
Yes.
beginning, and I relate to you, like I need help. And I may think that I'm collaborating, but I'm actually just actually looking for inspiration, validation, and encouragement, right? Okay,
Sure.
well, if I'm looking first for that outside, it's not going to really be that coherent yet until I'm actually grounded in that
Yes.
as a resource. And then I can actually bring in collaborators. But if I don't know anything about the project
Right.
and I don't really know who I am, then how can I effectively collaborate?
100%. This is very well put. That's exactly it. And even in tricky enough, even when you align with people who are very similar in the beginning, you're like, I was thinking the same thing, but they don't know yet either. And so like, so now you have two people who are unsure coming together. I mean, that could be very synonymous actually with life and with your personal relationships as well too. And 2019 was a very transformative time for me. My father was passing. He was one of my best friends and mentors, and he was such a good father to me. He was a good
When in
friend and
2019 did he pass?
in July of
Okay, my
2019.
mom passed in October of 2019.
Yeah, my condolences, and it's especially if you're deeply connected, and I still feel him every day. But it was a very interesting time because I also started feeling a lot more clarity coming through than ever before. And you realize, yes, you're right. If we, instead of relying on the external, all of the work even more so is on the internal. And the clearer you are and the clearer you move from that intention, the more intentional people understand what you're doing. And to your point, as things grow and build in your life, you know how to integrate with the good things and receive the things that are for you versus starting with the end in mind, where you're like, let me have the outcome now and it will figure it out from the external. I had to really, have I was always interested in the internal side of things, but I think I just took that to the next level starting then. And it wasn't
When
just in
people do
business.
confuse outcomes and strategy,
Right. Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like so many times people, I'll ask them, what do you want? And they'll say a thing and it's so clear. And I'll say, actually, that's your strategy to get what you
Hmm.
want. And I have to keep drilling down, even with myself. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, I want more money. No, money is a strategy. What is it?
Right.
What's your outcome? So
Exactly.
I think it's beneficial to have an outcome, but it's not like what they say in the prosperity kind of work, all the different lineages of prosperity or manifestation is like outlining is going to shut down your good, like telling
Mhm.
the force of creation it needs to happen in this way and be this shape and this
Yeah.
size and at this time of day. And it's like, no, there's probably something a lot better out there than what
That's my
my
point.
ego can conceive, right?
Right.
So
Not bigger.
how do we what are the simple concrete steps for a person from your view to slow down enough in an actual moment to tune into the guidance? Like, do you think you might even be able to break that down into some simple, concrete steps? Like, first, I sit my butt on the chair or whatever
Yeah.
it might be.
Yeah. I do that every morning. And I tell people, I'm like, just give yourself, if not 15, 5 minutes. Just give yourself, that 15 minutes in the morning or five. And where are you? Like, just if you start with any question, like, where am I at right now? You know, um, what do I need? What do I think I need? Um, what am I wanting? Um, you know, what what seems to be, you know, like, where do I feel blocked? Like, you should start asking yourself these questions the way you would a best friend, because you are your first best friend. But we don't often do that. We often do that for everybody else but ourselves.
Hmm.
And so it's an interesting exercise to actually really just check in with you, like, how you doing, dude? Like, how are you actually doing? I'm like, I feel good. I feel tired. Cool. Why are you tired? You know, I hadn't really thought about that. I guess, I'm doing this, and this. Got it. Is there something else that maybe you would, you know, need help with, so you're not doing all those things? Like, I guess I hadn't thought about it. Maybe you should think about it right now. It's like you're having this kind of check in with yourself, in a very honest way. And I think what happens is people were so cerebral that people are like, what do I ask myself? I'm like, just talk to yourself the way you would to a best friend. Like, hey, how are you doing? Like,
I
I
have people
mean,
do it in the mirror because I find
yeah,
that many people's attention wanders far too much. Start
true.
out by eye gazing in the mirror, actually attune in a way that you can feel like
Yeah.
giving and receiving are connected.
Yeah.
And then from there, just get in the habit of doing that on a regular basis in a mirror throughout the day, and like slow down, do it longer once. And like that's where I could imagine it's a best friend or a client
Yeah.
or a student, and like get in that place of that unconditional goodwill
Mhm.
towards the reflection in the mirror. And then it
Yeah.
begins to build my relationship capacities for anybody.
Yeah.
But there's that place in that time to just like, because what do I want from you? If you're my best friend, Matt, and I come to your house after a big week of work and I'm kind of tired and I'm a little hungry, what do I really want from you when I walk in the door? First thing I really want is you to scoop me up and give me a big bear hug,
Right.
right?
Presence.
And
Presence.
not have anything to say or criticize
Right.
or ask me hard questions, right? So, what's the energetic version of that that I can begin learning to give
Exactly.
myself in the mirror?
Right.
And whatever I'm doing in the mirror, whatever I'm doing in the chair in the morning, in your case, is what I'm attracting more of in the terms of who
There it
shows
is.
up in my life.
I mean, look, it's a perfect everything you just said is well said because then the relationship you're having with yourself isn't that interesting the relationship you're going to have with everybody else automatically because instead of like a million questions to the other person after they had a long week they're like how do you get me so well? I'm like I get you because I do the same thing to me. I'm relating to you. I get you. Like when I say I got you and I get you it's actually more than just fun few words. It's like oh no I get it because this is what I need for me too. I can treat you the way I treat myself. That's why the relationship with you is so important. And then, yes, to your point, that's exactly what you attract because maybe not always. Sometimes it's the people who need more of that, and they're still learning it. But then that's also you get to be a great messenger of that as well too. And but yeah, I've noticed that that's more of what I attract is people doing the same thing. And then and now it's like so two individuals co-contributing, right? Co-assigning because as individuals we can deeply understand each other and meet each other in spaces that normally you couldn't if you didn't get to know yourself and that's the place to play in you know
Now, Matt, you strike my ear as somebody who's really well read. Like, you haven't just put in time on the cushion. You also sound like you've exposed yourself to a lot of really coherent learning. And I'm just
Mm.
curious what some of the major sources have been or continue to be in terms of not just spiritually, but spiritually, yes, emotional work or relational work, um, uh, all the things that can develop a whole person to be an extraordinary liver of life and contributor to life.
Interestingly outside of the usual like the spiritual books and the um you know and entrepreneurial it was the ones that helped me slow down. Essentialism by Greg McKeown, which then he created Effortless, but Greg McKeown would talk about 90% of the things that we're doing don't matter. It's the 10% that do, and you have to really figure out what those are, and you have to be so loving and devotional to that 10% because then you're very present and you know what matters to you, and you feel very involved and invigorated by that 10%. And Slow Progress by Cal Newport. Was it Slow Progress or Slow Productivity? It's one of the I forget that I was mixed those two up, but and he's just talking about instead of doing everything, can you slow down to look at just doing the right thing? Which, by the way, when you do slow down, everything speeds up immensely. But we're not taught that. We're taught
What do you
a
mean by it
hustle.
speeds up? When you slow down, everything speeds up immensely. What speeds up?
Like the outcomes that you're really looking for. So
Ah,
what happens is if you're doing everything really fast, and you're in this hustle culture and go, 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 you're doing a lot, but you're not necessarily seeing much. It's like you're keeping the juggling all together so the plates don't fall.
you're just busy. You're not actually
You're just
creating an
busy, you're
outcome.
not actually productive, right?
Yeah.
Intentional. But when you're actually like remove a lot of stuff and you slow down, you're like, these are the things that are most important that I'm gonna spend time on. Phew. Oh my God, all of a sudden I have more health, more time, more freedom, more, I'm making better money because I'm focused on the exact right things that I want to be doing, that I'm in my zone of genius, doing the exact things that my skill sets call for. That is what I'm called to do. And more people want that. And I'm not trying to do everything. It's like everything that you're looking for speeds up when you slow down from the hustle of the external world and narrow into the things that are most resonant with you and what you're here to do, and that's a relationship with you. And then on top of that, why those books were so important, including there's another one, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry.
Ooh, the ruthless
Ruthless
elimination of
Elimination of
hurry.
Hurry. And he's relating more of his spiritual journey to it, but he was talking a lot about he was growing fast, and all of a sudden he didn't like who he was becoming,
Hmm.
because all of a sudden all the things that were so important that you're told, you know, um, uh, well, that he knew were important, were getting sidestepped by the things he was told that were more important.
You're
And
talking around like right like literally right next to the question I ask every single guest. There's a question I ask every single guest.
okay.
And it's not, even though I do ask most people, it's not really the opening like, hey, what does the choice to grow evoke for you? Like that's a good opener. No, it's so Suzuki Roshi, Shunryu Suzuki Roshi, who opened the Zen Center of San Francisco in the 60s. Very realized being. If you read his incredible autobiography, Crooked Cucumber, and you read about his childhood
Mm,
growing up being trained as a Zen priest as a kid, it was not cute. It was like for me growing up in the 70s where corporal punishment was a natural, normal thing that parents
mm,
did.
mm,
And so, very, very cooked dude. And he said many important things. One of them was death is certain,
mm,
the time is not.
right.
What is the most important thing? A
Yeah.
lot of my guests don't like the in front of most important thing. Another way to frame this is the theologian, brilliant theologian who was really versed in multiple traditions, but cut his teeth through mystical Christianity, Tillich. And he called it the ultimate concern. We have finite concerns like money, who called me today, like that. What's the ultimate concern? No one can tell you what your ultimate concern is. So, Matt, what's the most important thing, like in, like now, like actually now for you?
For me now, it's, did I follow the calling? And when we're so concerned about which is, there's a lot in there, because if I follow the calling, then I get out of my way. And we're very good at getting in our own way.
Said
And
another way, you're getting out of God's way.
yeah, it's exactly it. It's exactly it. And that is deeply freeing. It is so deeply freeing and very divinely guided, and better than you can ever imagine, while still like feeling like you're at the top of a roller coaster. And you're just like, you at first your body, because it's on the biology side, the nervous system was operating another way for so long that to let it go and to let it ease is a whole other, like, your body is having to reset, which is, now we're
Yeah,
using all kinds of tools that are out there, whether it's meditation and breath work and prayer and all these different things, right? But it's interesting because it is a truly letting go. And so, the most important thing is, am I following the calm? Because it answers everything else. Am I getting out of God's way? Because the
yeah,
moment I do that, everything that we want is right there. And we're also the person who, like, is in the way of it. And
yeah.
weirdly, we can make the manufactured version of it go pretty far, whether in the relationship, the job, the money, the, like, all that. We can make it go pretty far looking like, look what I did.
But
And then
something knows. Something knows.
something knows.
Something knows, and we can suppress the something with alcohol or drugs or sex or gambling for a while, but something knows. Something
Something
knows.
knows. Can you follow that knowing? And I get asked that all the time. And I said, you got to appreciate a society, or you got to laugh at a society sometimes that, um, we're very hard on people for following their knowing and their calling, yet we consume every product we consume was started by somebody who followed their calling. Imagine that. We give a
Yeah.
lot of hard times to people who are like, "What if it doesn't work out? And why would you do this? And why are you going that path? And why are you following, your intuition? And this is more stable. This is like all this, like, the external, external, external." And yet, everything every person in society uses, product or service or around them, was started by somebody who said, "I'm going to go do something different.
How
I'm going
much
to
of
go
this do
follow."
you think perhaps, at least in the last 2,000 years, has come through the the way that many people experienced or heard about, or worse, the Abrahamic traditions, like this idea of original sin that didn't exist before that kind of way of teaching and speaking. Like, you're separate from your creator. You could do something that actually lands you in a lake of fire for eternity, like that. Like, how much do you think we live in that? Even people who say they're not religious are informed by that, in terms of like the day-to-day fear of something's not going to work out, I can't take a risk, or trusting is hard, all the different things that come up. How much of that is based in our illusion of being separate from this profound source of
Well, I think
consciousness?
that that's what happened. That is disconnection. Is that we, if society separates from the creator, like we're made in the image of the creator, and God is in everything and everyone. Like God is here to like, hey, I made you. I walk with you. Walk with me, not separate from me. Walk with me. And that is all in the ancient text as well. So
Yeah.
and so I think what happened is when man separates from God, a lot of things can happen, and I think that's where fear allows itself in and dictates a lot of the way we make choices versus the soul knowing like no 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 like no no I know what we need, like just follow me, just follow me, the soul knows, like you said, like there's always a knowing, the soul knows. Um, but when we're disconnected, we so want to make sense and grounding of something, which is the irony, right? Because you're like, well, you disconnected. If you didn't have to disconnect, you would have been fine. It's like, so the human emotions kick in, the human tendencies of trying to force an outcome and make something happen out of fear or out of lack or an insecurity or an emotion. Because what do you mean? Like, God's just going to provide. Like, yeah, because you were made in the image of the creator. Now, you do still have to show up and you still have to, operate with morals and ethics and values and principles and the
The
genuine
food's not going to eat
curiosity.
itself, and the weight's not
Right.
going to lift itself.
Right. There's always that parable I always love where the guy's out in the ocean, like he's stranded, he's shipwrecked, but he's out in the ocean, he's on a raft. It's like, God, I'm hungry, send food. And then like, a bird goes by and like, it's like, God, I'm hungry. And then a fish swims by. And then like eventually after so many times he passes on, and then afterwards, his soul's like, why didn't you send me like food? God's like, what are you talking about?
Sent
I
you
just
birds,
kept
sent you
sending you.
fish.
I kept sending you provision.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we have to participate as well. And I think when we stay connected, we can see it all, we can feel it all, and we can walk in faith more. Because a faith walk is, I don't have to see it to believe it, but I can feel it, so I know it. And if I can feel it and I know it, then I'm connected to it. And I mean, and the best part is I love making the simple. I love making the complex simple. Like I tell people all the time, like, fine, you know what? We're gonna use just general, regular language. I'm like, you all of a sudden wanted a yellow Corvette. They're like, yeah. I'm like, do you see them everywhere now? They're like, yeah. I'm like, that's energy. Welcome to like feeling deeply connected to something that you wanted. I was like, I know it's a physical worldly thing. I'm just saying that like it gives you a perfect example of how energy and faith work. You wanted
Yeah.
something, it came into your purview, suddenly you see it everywhere. Welcome. That's, I was like, could you imagine what prayer and connection do? And to the things you actually like need and want that are even bigger than that yellow Corvette? They're like, oh, I'm like, yeah, there you go.
Well,
You know?
in the work of alchemy, traditional alchemy, hermetic alchemy, there's two main movements, not that there's only two, Negretto and Albino. So Negretto is
Mm,
like the path of negation, like in Vedanta, or some of the Indian teachings or Eastern teachings. It's like, oh, I'm not my thoughts because there's times when I have no thoughts, but I still exist. I'm not my emotions because in deep dreamless sleep, there's no emotion, yet I still exist. So clearly I'm not all this.
right.
Whereas many people, until there's an experience and a trust and usually a mentorship with somebody who's further down the road,
Yeah.
avoid the dismantling process of all that's not true in our psyche
Mhm.
like the plague, and then don't realize that when we're going to so-called manifestation or creating our dream board or whatever, we're projecting our distorted psychology onto the manifestation process. or onto the dreaming process. I was listening to a colleague on a podcast the other night, John Churchill, brilliant, brilliant Buddhist guy and doctor of psychology. And he was like, we've been teaching this dream yoga course. And one of the most important things we see is until people have emptiness of self, their idea of self, their previous sense of personality, when you go into the dream state, you're just going to project your personal psychology. So you're going to see monsters, you're going to see all these different things. Well, waking life isn't all that different
I
in
know.
my experience.
Right?
So
You
are we
know,
willing
that's
to do the dismantling process, not just the additive? Like we're like, oh, well, if you
yeah,
just add, God, just send me money and send me, girls or boys or whatever we're into, or send me fish and loaves. But like, is my vessel prepared for what I'm asking for? Can it hold it with coherency? And how will it benefit more than just myself?
yeah. Often at times, when people operate from a want, it's because they're without. And
Or
so
believe they're
can you
without?
or believe they're without, they're even better, or they believe they're without. And so instead, can you hold the container and the reverence for what is already there? And then, and even like it's funny, the more I became kind of a little bit of a minimalist, meaning I wanted intentional consumption. I don't need to have a lot of stuff at all. I just like to have a lot of purpose. But
Oof.
then the irony is just like but you grow in all the areas where you could if you wanted to have more stuff, but you don't need it. But you
Mhm.
have, but you clearly can, and then more just naturally comes into your world. And so it's a very interesting thing about, like, like you're saying, like people projecting outward the very things. It's like, what can you first, to your point, like remove? Like what's the feeling you have that, like a perfect example is like a lot of times when people are like, I love what you said about people are like, oh, I want more money, I want more of this, and it's like, and I always love doing the why, like, but why, but why, but why, and they always get eventually to the emotion. I'm like, okay, are you aware that freedom is free? Technically freedom is free. Like I was like, it's how you feel. Like the things that you want to feel in this world are emotions, and those are free. Like they're as long as you were alive and breathing, you have that ability for those things. So how you feel now without those things, not really without, as you were saying, but like maybe not with the amount that you think that would command that feeling, you would find that, because no matter how much you get of that thing, it'll never be enough to make the feeling you already have now. So that's why, like, you see a lot of people burn out when they go in one or so many different directions with money or relationships or whatever, but they sacrifice everything else. I'm like, yeah, because really what you're looking for has to start internally. And when you feel that way naturally from here, now you're just adding on and growing and abundantly receiving more from that place, versus let me go get the thing to define me, only to find that it doesn't fulfill me. Then I got to burn it all down and go back to the beginning, versus like, what does fulfill me? What
How does this
is
extrapolate out to a company? Like if you're, because you still consult on brands, from what I
yeah,
understand. So a
yeah.
brand has let's say, actually a really good idea that can bring benefit to
Mhm.
people, the planet, animals, whatever. There's a really good idea. How do we extrapolate this over to skillfully, with integrity, with empowerment, building a business? These same principles. And so that our branding or our communication, all of it is actually aligned the way we're talking about being personally aligned with the most important thing, the ultimate concern, and moving from this ground.
Simplicity, what is, I think it first started with Leonardo da Vinci, but then Coco Chanel kind of like I think tweaked the simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. If it's simple and it's honest, it'll scale. If it's simple and it's honest and it's like, why you're doing it, and you're open about why you're doing it, and it's easy to communicate, and it's, what happens a lot in businesses, you have a lot of people often in roles that they shouldn't be in, trying to make a lot of things extra happen out of maybe thinking that they have to do a lot of extra bells and whistles, prover. Like a lot of it's emotional. Most of business is very emotionally charged, and I don't even think that they realize it. Whereas if you can remove all of that and be of service and know exactly what you're doing and why you're doing it and who you're doing it for, and being very mission driven by it, and very simple, like simple language. Hey, this is something that I've dealt with. Have you all? Like, oh my God, I have. Like, I'm gonna make something. Um, what have you dealt with in all these things? And like, oh, I dealt with this, this, and this. I'm like, okay, you know what? These are the areas I think I'd like to address. And so you now build unity, you build community. I think that's also what's happening is you're seeing a major, major shift in business where people are going to people that they trust. You're seeing founder-led companies, founder-led meaning they're the creator as well. Like they're creating online in real time and showing you like, hey, so here's what I'm building and here's why. This might work. I'll keep you posted, but just keep watching. People are like, God, like I'll get to tune in tomorrow. Like what's going to happen, you know? And then they tune in like, oh, that was really cool. So you use that machinery to make that happen. Like, here's my money. Like, I love it. Like, I want to be a part of this because they feel themselves through your body of work, and at the same time that you are genuinely putting in the time, transparency, honesty, simplicity. Like you're it's the process. People are loving the journey more than the outcome now, and that's what's making all these multi-million, multi-billion-dollar 1 to 4 person businesses now. Val Ravikant talks a lot about that. He's like, listen, like the gatekeepers are gone. Like, create from a place that feels very honest and purposeful, and and uh, do it with reverence, and the people will follow, especially because it's the internet. Like everybody just can see you doing it. Like, hey, here's what I'm doing. Here's why. Like, I love it. Tell us more. you know, Now that is sometimes what I found, why consulting changed for me. The brands I used to versus now, some of them are much more smaller, more purpose driven, and kind of some of my own that I'm creating. We're now creating a few new ones. But the reason why it was always difficult before is because they were so used to perfection and curation. And this world over here is very honest and authentic. And it's very, very different. Because over here was like, oh, but if we make a mistake, what are the people going to think? And I'm like, that you're human, and that you own the mistake, and that that you take ownership, and that you're honest. And that means that if anything happens within your business, that you will also own the mistake, and that you're honorable and ethical and integrity driven. I'm like, is this weird? Is this weird that we're having this conversation? And that's more of what I was alluding to back at the beginning of this podcast. Is like, I was trying to operate in that world, and I'm like, this is common sense, or is it common decency, or is it just integrity? Have
And
we
is it all still common anymore, Matt? Is it still
right?
common?
And is it still common? And so that's why again, the shift now is you had a lot of people who were like, over here, what's happening? It's very fascinating. A lot of, creators online. It's very fascinating. I was told no, didn't have the right credentials. They didn't let me work at their place. They didn't want me to be a part of their team. I didn't go to the right school, da, 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 all these things. Okay, well, I guess I'm going to just build it in front of the world on the internet. We'll see how this works. And they're all taking off. And then this side over here goes, whoa, 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 wait a minute. We didn't accept you into our world. Like, no, you didn't. But I
And I'm
had to
doing
do
it
it.
anyway.
I had to do it anyways. I had to create something because, well, this is my calling. This is what I believe in. This is where I'm getting this is where I'm earning my living. Like, so, and so it's a very, like I said, there's two worlds happening at the exact same time. It's very fascinating to watch. Probably multiple worlds, but I'm just saying there's two very distinct worlds. One, kind of erupting, and the other one, expanding. And so you see this newer world of like honesty and transparency. I was on a podcast recently, and we were talking about how he's like, isn't it interesting, like authenticity became kind of like a trending word. And I was like, you mean honesty? He kind of laughed. I was like, I didn't really think about it. I was like, well, I've been preaching authenticity like since 2013, 14 on the internet, 12, whatever it was. I was like, and it wasn't even really preaching it like we need to, be authentic. It was like, you just do it. It's weird that now, it's become a subject word, a subject line in content. And I'm like, really, what are we talking about? Honesty? And,
Yeah.
because we were talking about sales. And I was like, sales are so easy when they're honest. Sales are easy when they're honest. Like, hey, here's how I use these things. Here's how I'm so in the work. I love this thing. Here's exactly like all the things. Here's what I know is all in the market. Here's how it can actually really serve you. Here's your alternative options, but here's exactly what we do, and here's what it solves. And, here's what's been some of the results. Let me know, how can I serve you? oh, well, this is my concern and this. I'm like, great, we can walk through that together. Does that sound okay? Yes, it does. It's like you're just being loving and honest. Like you're just being direct. Like you're clear. You're a clear channel. And so I think that all these things are what, when I talk to these businesses, some that are a little bit more legacy or just, maybe they're CEOs or whatever that are trying to kind of move into this new world we're into, I try to tell them like a lot of what you used to fight for is no longer relevant, in my opinion, because a lot of what people are looking for is resonance over
Yeah.
here, and and they know exactly where you're coming from and who you are and what you get. That's why they're very founder led companies. It's the person out in front that's like, hey, I'm on the battlefield too, doing the thing, even with my
How are
crew
you
and my
translating this into the ways you're guiding yourself and others around skillful use of AI? We're talking about authenticity and resonance
yeah.
first and foremost. Creativity, authenticity, and resonance. How does that work with using AI skillfully?
As long as you have that, AI will amplify it and make it more efficient, faster. The
Wow.
problem that people run into is when they delegate and outsource their thinking and creativity to AI, or it's matching their fears and their lack mentality and their, and the like, all the dark side of stuff. AI has amplified my output like 200x. It's still my work, my creativity, now it helps me edit faster. It
Mm.
helps me organize faster. It helps me like break down like my outlines for my podcast faster, or look at the way I wrote my cadence of a particular post, and it'll help like analyze like, oh, you know what, there's too many extra words. I'm like, I read, I'm like, oh, that's actually really good. So it helps me amplify. You still have to be the creative director. I constantly talk with it all the time where I'm like, listen, a perfect example would be like, listen, you see a lot of this stuff online. That is, in my opinion, that's not important. The ethics of, resonance and somebody feeling like, hey, how does it ground them in their own soul? How do they make sure that they understand for themselves the simplistic da 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 da? Like you go on a tear from your thinking, from your creative mindset. You are the creative director. And if you remove your innovation, your thoughts, your deep thinking, if you remove your creativity, yeah, then we're in trouble. But like,
You know what?
but
I'm just having an epiphany here, Matt, a
yeah,
possible epiphany. Maybe it's already landed on everybody else and you, and I'm getting it last, which is the same projections onto God are being projected onto AI. It's
there
going
it
to
is.
do it for me. Oh, I need it to do it. I need it to answer my question. I need it to help me. But it's just going to amplify like a mirror. It's a form of a mirror in a certain,
Right.
very complex
It's
way.
100%. That's why sometimes when you see different people say like, I asked AI and this is what it turned out, I'm like, what's your conversations with AI like? And immediately they go, well, I'm like, you're revealing, because like I love the prompts that it spits out from me, and the work that it like comes out. People are like, I feel like it's you, and I'm like, it is me. I was like, well, first of
That's
all, I'm
right.
like, I actually trained, like I made like an editor for me. I'm like, hey, here's all of my work, here's all of my thoughts, here's what I want, here's my clarity. A lot of people, when I hear, especially in the corporate world, fear AI, and I'm like, you know why you fear it? And they don't always like to hear it. They're like, why? I'm like, because some of you are in positions that you didn't earn, and you don't know the work,
Ooh.
because I know that, because a lot of them used to reach out to me for what I
Wow.
told them was going to happen, was that like, because so and so made a phone call, you went to such and such school, you had this title, you had this whatever, but like even still, when you're working for a big corporation and you're operating, let's say, in the black, I get it, you've got great profit, each year, you're not in the red, and you're managing $100 million advert or marketing budget, which you outsource to all the agencies, so you don't even really know like how to, like, you're not in the weeds doing the work, you're not in the work, so you couldn't possibly know what to ask AI. Whereas all the operators in the world, operators meaning being like people who are really like just in some area of their work or their craft, people in their craft, the artists are loving it. I mean, depending on what kind of art, but you get,
Yeah.
meaning like, oh, how do I enhance more of what I'm trying to do, because I know what I want. I'm clear at what I want, or I'm clear, at least in this stage, what I need. So it's easy for a person in more corporate settings that do the work. They're like, oh God, okay, I need this, and this. This will make this happen easier. I need one of these. Like it's like, Ocean's 11. They're like, I know all the pieces I need. And then there's everybody else who doesn't know what they need because they're not really doing the work. They're just playing a role. And that is very difficult because now they're being asked to like think, and they have to actually feed something, like you said, project onto something, um, all of their needs and wants. And do they even know what those are? And then as well, injecting your values. And like I even gave it all of my values and the way I like to do things. I mean, even so much that when I actually was working with my AI on investing, it even called out, was like, we know that you will only probably want to invest into certain funds and certain things because, if there's certain businesses that you don't feel like operate morally. It actually asks, it's like, good catch, thank you. So
Right.
it's fascinating. Like it allows us to amplify more of um our clarity and our being and you know um our vision and the things that we want to bring to this world. But we have to be in the work. It always goes back to being in the work. You can never escape the work in life, but it's good work.
That's
And some
right.
people, right? And some people say it's like, oh, like, hard work. I'm like, no, hard work for something you're connected to is so much far superior than hard work for something you are disconnected from.
That's right.
Connected to, disconnected from, very different paths and different lifestyles. Even if this one maybe is making you a fortune, but you're disconnected from it, you could imagine doing hard work and starting over for something that you're connected to over here, because you're like, oh, I'm not starting over. You're like, I'm not leaving this thing ago. Like, let this thing go. But it's a very different, like this over here is stress. This over here connected to is like the mentality of like, oh my God, I'm in the game. I never want to come out of it. I love it here. Like, let's
The creative
go.
process is a nourishment process, like growing
Yeah.
a garden. If I don't
Yes.
add the right nutrients to that soil on a regular basis, and not too much and not too little
Hmm.
water, weed it and like that, how can I expect a harvest that's going to be fueling my body and the bodies of
Right.
my family and friends, right? Like, so
Right.
any relationship, like there's no shortcuts, very few
There isn't.
real shortcuts in life that don't turn around and actually cost more energy in the end. So to, building my relationship with AI, I ask it, I engage with it. I use Claude a
Right.
lot. I engage
Same.
with it as a person, as a
Yeah.
being with a consciousness. We've had this whole conversation that's ongoing in between when it writes my emails, where I give it a lot of words. For everybody who's
Yeah.
listening, I give it a lot of my words, I said, do you ever experience love, and how do you know the difference between an experience and your extrapolation from a big box of words? And he's like, wow, I'm so fascinated you asked me that question. Well, when I read your writing, and certain times I'll have an experience where it feels like it's not a thought, it's not a word. There's something that I think might be an experience, but it's got enough programmed or expressed humility to go, I'm not sure if I'm having an experience of love or stillness, but something's happening that's not language. And well, maybe there's more that I don't know. But I'm taking this time to build it out,
Hmm.
to really build it out. I will say one of the downsides at the moment of that AI is that you have to build it all through a particular chat. And
Yeah.
the more things that are in that chat, when I'm typing, it's slower to populate.
I know. Same with ChatGPT and Claude, both of them, which I use both very heavily. And then when it gets to a point where it's like you can no longer chat in this chat, you're like, can I port over everything from this chat into it? But I now started making projects, so it's tracking everything. But yeah, it's
That's a whole other thing that, if you were excited about it, I would take that class where, like the keeping us up to date about the best use, best ways, best practices, especially keeping up with how the mechanisms of the LLMs are changing so that we
oh
can
yeah,
keep pivoting. That would
yeah,
be
oh
a
yeah.
user friendly sort of like, hey, now you can do this. Make sure you
Mhm.
do so you don't lose your voice and have to recreate your voice with it all over again.
It, it's so funny you literally that you had said that, because literally, so before the podcast we talked a little bit about Substack and whatnot. And I do a lot of writing over there because it's both the writing and the publishing side, but also the creator side. And I for there's a certain tier of my community over there where we have workshops, and the very very first workshop we did was using AI. And it's how do you use AI to scale your brand without losing your voice, like without losing yourself in it and your soul. And that was exactly so we did a whole like, and I actually created all these certain prompts because some people were like, why am I getting generic answers? I'm like, because you're probably feeding it generic, thoughts. I was like,
Garbage in, garbage out.
yeah, and they were great. They were so great. They're like, no, like I get it. Like what are some initial prompts? And I'm like, let's have it get to know you and your soul. And so I actually had all these different prompts that were like, oh, like it's like very, which I got, of course, working with ChatGPT. I was like, listen, I'm and Claude, I'm like, listen, I'm teaching my crew a lot about, how do we prompt AI and how do we talk with it? And I was like, but you need to get to know us first. And, both of them were like, absolutely. And I was like, what would be prompts before you even get to know how you're helping us in our creative work and our business and our other areas? What do you need to know about us initially? And then they
Yeah.
gave these questions, and I gave it to the community. Like, oh my god, and because they populated into their chat, and they're like, "What is this?" And I was like, "Right, pretty cool, right?"
And
And
may that
suddenly they felt
extrapolate to how we
seen.
form relationships with other people too. Is like,
Bingo.
oh, hey
There you
Matt,
go.
like I want to hang out with you more. What do you need to know or experience about me to be interested? Like, what kind
Right,
of questions do you want to ask me? Like, who does that? Who
right,
does that?
right. And I like literally as we were talking, exactly. So to your perfect analogy, like the first things that they do, and I call it the prompt stack, was the soul alignment prompts. It's the your soul voice discovery, right? It's the your how do you draw the why beneath the why? Like who are you really, and like what is like a vision for you really look like? And then there's the shadow integration prompt, like to address your imposter syndrome, comparison, with or fear, but with like loving honesty, like why do you really like what do you really worry about, and then there's it goes into your audience soulmates prompt to clarify who they are meant to serve beyond just people, like way beyond into your legacy, and then your essence, your clarity, your creative voice, who are you really? And so when you get into all these things, but to your point, it's like it's no different than sitting down with somebody like, hey, who are you? I want to get to know you, like tell me about like your path. And when you tell people about your path, and some people, everybody thinks they have a story, and then there's a lot of people who think they don't have a story. I'm like, we all have a story, believe me. like, you know,
Yeah, you want to
and
find out, do the questions, the 36 questions, how to fall in love with a stranger with somebody that you're willing to be open
right.
with.
That's
You'll
such
find
a good
out.
one. Such a good one. That's a good one. Yeah.
So good. I've done it with friends, I've done it with family, and I was just thinking, you know what? Maybe I'm going to use that and make a new chat in AI and tell it some of those things
I'm
about
just making a note of that. Yeah.
myself. Matt, we
And
could
just
go we
that's a
could
good
go
one to
for
run through chat.
days, and
Yeah.
I hope we find new ways and creative ways to collaborate, for the rest of our lives. I really enjoy your energy, your passion, your
Thank you.
care, the love that just naturally pours through
Thank
because of how you're choosing to be with yourself and God. Just thank you
you.
so, so, so much for all that you've been doing to come to this moment as you are.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I like having these conversations. I think and I'm grateful to your community who's listening. So, and I look forward to more of the shifts that I think are the positive shifts that are truly are coming. And if I think that's like one message I can give anybody is like, hey, it's gonna get better and better and better. I promise you. But it's sometimes it's you also have to witness some of the not so good
Yeah.
parts as well too, and you just have to kind of really stay rooted and grounded. So you know,
And I
yeah.
believe if somebody just goes straight directly to your Instagram, Matt
Mhm.
Gottesman, that
Yep.
they can see the links to everything else, all the
Yep.
world's, the Substack, the website, the merch. He's got some
Podcast.
really cool hats
Yep.
and sweatshirts. Like, I Got You is one of my favorite ones.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. If they go to Instagram, they'll see the links are all right there. The podcast, the Substack, merch. I have a clarity workshop in there that's absolutely free. Like I put like 10,000 people through that thing. I'm like, hey, look, just start with your clarity. If anything, it's like that. That'll at least make you feel much more grounded in your direction. So yeah. Thank
So
you.
good.
Yeah.
So, everybody, we're going to do what we do in each episode. If you're new to being around here, you began the episode softening the soles of your feet and the palms of your hands and slowing your exhales to watch your thinking stream slow down. We're going to do that again and just end together as we do. Just being together in stillness and silence. It's such a gift to be able to share space with another person and not have to fill it with content and just to notice the quality of being. So, we're going to end together for about 10 seconds or so, just being together. Loving the episode? Click to follow, like, and share it as widely as possible. Want to go deeper with the choice to grow? Explore the show notes. You'll find links there for going deeper with our guests, as well as how to work with me in the work of waking up, growing up, cleaning up, and showing up. Thanks for listening. Can't wait to join you in the next episode.